I see it on the screen here. There we go. I got it. Okay, we'll see if it works. Little journey down memory lane.
Memory Wayne.
So anyway, it was ironic that that was film was offered in 1960, a year after Alaska became a state. And the period when I was in Alaska that I'm going to describe, we were there for 7 days helping to lead an adult university trip back when they did those things. And so I'm just going to concentrate on the town of Juneau, which is the capital of Alaska. And I've been spotlighted, okay. So if you didn't imagine where it is, there it is in the southeastern part of Alaska, and that's probably the mildest climate in the state, which may be why they put it there. I'm not sure. It's the size of Ithaca, basically, and I was somewhat surprised by that, but not totally after being there. And it is more centrally isolated than Ithaca is, accessible only by air or water. There are no automobile routes that go to Juneau, Alaska. And so it's a relatively peaceful spot. There are automobiles there, but they were brought in by ferry. And this is where we spent 7 days with the Cornell Adult University group. And this is the total trip. And Juneau was just a small part of it. My wife and I arrived there early to sightsee on our own. But where we went was up to a beautiful national park, Glacier Bay National Park up here. And I saw more humpback whales and a few orcas on that leg of the trip than I have anywhere else. And then back through various straits and then back eventually to Juneau. A lot of culture involved with Native American groups that we visited along the way and so on. So it was a great trip. I felt privileged to be able to go as part of the adult university team. So this is downtown Juneau. This is the main street. I was looked at strangely when I stood in the middle of the street and took this picture, but I guess they do see some sightseers occasionally. And what I did realize while I was there is that Juneau is a lovely small town, the size of Ithaca again, and they have a sense of humor there that I appreciated at least. And I have a somewhat twisted sense of humor, but it's big. Texas thinks they are big, but most of them don't know that Alaska is a state. So this is the way we understand it. And I like this too. The Mount Juneau Trading Post is the oldest native trading post in Alaska. And note when it was established. A long time ago. So there it is. And this is the airport with gates for float planes too, several gates for float planes, because in the interior of Alaska, if there's water, that's the main way of getting around. And if there's not, then there's bush pilot aircraft that can land in the summer, at least on dirt runways. And this is the docks, basically, the seaside of Juneau here. This, I believe, with deference to Ed, is an otter, single otter turbine plane, which seems to be the workhorse float plane that is in Alaska. But it's a beautiful setting and nestled on the water in the mountains. And in summertime, and this was August when we were there, lots of flowers are planted all around the town. So it's a beautiful, beautiful small town. With art that's distinctive and reflects the artistic abilities and the totems of the Inuit in this case, and other native tribes that occur in Alaska. The Athabascans are the largest tribe in Alaska, and they're primarily on the interior. The Inuit are primarily the seagoing tribes in Alaska, primarily along the coast and on the islands. And it's a relaxed kind of place. This is again the walkway along the waterfront in downtown Juneau. I felt at home there for a probably obscure reason to most of you. They have the flags of the other 49 states flying from the lampposts in town and other places. And I saw this and I thought, well, doggone, here I am. And that's the great state of Tennessee, the three states of Tennessee, East, Middle, and West. So the setting, of course, is what makes it special. It's just an absolutely beautiful setting. And the visitor center is down here. It's large, conference center, really. And then the motel associated with it's right here. So it's set up for conferences if there's any group that wants to go so far north to have a conference. And king crab appears to be the delicacy of choice there. At only $55 a person, all you can eat. I don't think I could eat $55 worth of king crab. I might drink $55 worth of good Alaskan beer, but I'm not sure about the king crab. And there's even a specialty restaurant, Tracy's King Crab Shack, which is fairly large for a shack, as I understand it. And this, I guess, is Tracy in her younger days. And I got a king crab salad there, so I didn't have to pick through the skeleton of the beast. And it was quite good, actually, and the most reasonable thing on the menu. And there was a little less in economics than supply and demand. The price of king crab, of course, is approaching, and probably is now, $20 a pound. I know that lump crab, blue crab from the Chesapeake Bay is $20 a pound right now. And of course, it reflects the demand that has been growing over the years for king crab. And this really caught my attention. I do like dogs quite a bit. They're my favorite domestic animal. Dogs make a house a home if you invite them in. This was Patsy Ann. Now, do you folks have on your screen the screen of choices, the icons above, or is that just for me?
That's for you.
Okay, fair enough. Good, I'm glad. So Patsy Ann was there from 1929 until 1942. She was an English bull terrier that was purchased by a local dentist, but she adopted the waterfront. And there's the statue, of course, that was put up for her, I think, in 1992 with a plaque describing the statue and her history. And she was identified in 1934 as the official greeter of Juneau, a post that she held until she passed away in 1942. She had a way of understanding or knowing, as dogs can do, probably through low frequency sound, the arrival of any boats at the harbor. And she would go down to the harbor to meet the boats unerringly, and hence then was the official greeter of Juneau. And there's lots of wildlife near Juneau. You don't have to go far. You drive outside of town into the national forest, and Juneau has as its backyard the largest national forest in the United States, the Tongass National Forest, beautiful area. And I had an introduction to common ravens as city birds. This one apparently didn't notice the no parking sign and didn't much pay attention to it. So this was right on the main street of Juneau, and they were all about, and it was pleasant. The only other member of their family that's there is the other North American crow, the northwestern crow, but it's more along the shoreline further to the north or south. The common gull there, the one that you see all the time on the water and all about, along with a few others, except for its pink feet, looks an awfully lot like our herring gull. It's a glaucous winged gull. A gray winged gull would be another name for it if you wanted to apply it. Lovely bird, about the size of our herring gull. And there's two puffins in North America, the Atlantic puffin on the East Coast, the tufted puffin on the West Coast. And the tufted puffin to me looks like an Atlantic puffin that went to a beauty shop somewhere. They're beautiful little birds. And these were right in the harbor of Juneau. Just had to walk out and look down, and there were tufted puffins and other seabirds as well. There are hummingbirds, a hummingbird. There's only two possible hummingbird species in Alaska, and this is the more likely one. It's rufous hummingbird. Beautiful little bird. This is an adult female, I believe, if not an immature bird, because she's not showing the bright red throat. The throat of the male is about the red of those Oswego tea blossoms that this bird is nectaring at. So It's a rufous hummingbird. The other one that gets into Alaska, but only in the southeast part with Juneau, is Anna's hummingbird. And this gives you a reference point. The hummingbird is the northernmost breeding hummingbird in North America. Migrates throughout the Southwest, which is where I've seen them, and overwinters in central Mexico. They do occasionally drift eastward. And I have a brother-in-law lives in Mobile, Alabama, or near Mobile, Alabama, on the Redneck Riviera, Gulf Shores, Florida, and or Gulf Shores, Alabama. And he reports that there have been rufous hummingbirds seen in Alabama this past winter. So they're tolerant of cold. There's another report of one that turned up just north and east of Philadelphia for the winter and was there sipping nectar until it probably either migrated or died, but I haven't heard the results. So rufous hummingbirds, and they have turned up in Ithaca once a long time ago. They can drift eastward when they migrate if they especially get a southwesterly wind that carries them eastward. Beautiful little bird, though. There's stellar sea lions as well as California sea lions up and down the coast. The stellar is somewhat rare and is during the period when the Russians and also some of the Canadians were in the fur market. Stellar sea lions were virtually extirpated for their pelts, which were a high quality fur for women's coats and men's coats and so on in wintertime. But here you can see them all along the shore. And one of my favorite mammals, not my most favorite, one of my favorite ones is the sea otter, and a real conservation success story here until recently. And they were virtually extirpated for their pelts, for their fur by 1899. And they've now reasonably recovered from that assault. And the equivalent of our eastern woodchuck in the same family, hoary marmot, which is a beautiful little frosty colored woodchuck basically, and friendly, tolerant. The birds and mammals in Alaska that I encountered are really comfortable with people, and they're relatively easy to photograph with a medium length focal length lens. So this was the hoary marmot that I saw just outside of Juneau. And on the steep slopes, those slopes that are inland from Juneau, there's mountain goat. If you're patient, we looked all the time for bighorn sheep, but didn't see those. We were comfortable seeing mountain goats. And black bear, not as close as it appears. We were on a bridge on a trail overlooking this stream, and we looked down, and here was a black bear prowling around in the stream. And we wondered what it was doing there, and we sort of had a guess. And we paid closer attention, and sockeye salmon were migrating upstream that day. So the bear was eating healthy on fresh salmon like we probably should be doing ourselves sometime. And at a distance with a 500 millimeter lens, as close as I want to get to a grizzly bear, but this was a female that had caught a fish and was feeding her cubs there just behind her. So we did see some of the large mammals of Alaska. We did not see reindeer because we weren't far enough inland to see those, but they're there and you can see them easily. And I'll wrap it up with my favorite small mammal, as you may have guessed from my last newsletter. This is red squirrel of the same species that we have here in Ithaca. It ranges from the northeastern states northwestward to Alaska, across Canada, and down into the Rocky Mountains, and then all the way down the Appalachian mountain chain at high elevations where there's spruce and fir, all the way to East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, which is where I first met it. So that is an introduction to Juneau, and that's really where I'm finishing up. And if you have some questions, I might be able to answer some of them.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I was identified as a pinch hitter here, but I got drafted when the speaker couldn't show up, I guess.
Yeah, that was the case. I'm still working on that one.
Thank you, Mark, for the opportunity.
Darling. Really,
Very
question.
interesting.
Very nice.
So I have a question. How many people were on the cruise ship that you were using to go through the inland passage there?
About 40, as I recall.
Wow,
A
nice.
small group.
Yeah.
And it was just great fun. My wife and I had been to Alaska together for, I think, 4 visits. Once I had a graduate student working on the edge of the Bering Sea studying land birds. And so we decided we'd take the trip up there. I never worked with a student when I didn't visit their research area. And so it was a hard trip to do, but we did it anyway. And we got something, it was fun because she was working in the area of an old dew line radar station. Remember the distance early warning system that still has structures up there. And if you were doing research there, they would allow you to stay in rather luxurious accommodations in the dew line dormitory compared to other options out there. So we stayed there for a while, and I was watching or looking mostly at wildflowers. My student, whom I had encouraged to study botany, was amazed that I could identify the plants in Alaska, at least a genus. And I told her, I said, the genera of these plants occur in the Catskills and Adirondacks in New York as well. And therefore, it's probably a good idea to study botany. So I just reinforced that a bit. She graduated with her master's in natural resources, and she's now the, I guess, the manager over all of the Alaskan Islands refuge system. And the refuge is called the Alaskan Islands Refuge. And there are a lot of rookeries of seabirds that she's responsible now for paying attention to and regulating and managing in Alaska. So it was a useful sort of thing, I hope.
Charlie, what time of year was that? And also, was that area affected by the Exxon Valdez at all?
No, that was farther north near Cook Inlet, I think. I don't think Cook Inlet was affected. And it was second week of August, which is a nice time to be there. It was very summer-like, kind of like an Ithaca spring.
How many days were you on the boat, Chuck?
7 days.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of things. There was kayaking, and I'm allergic to water psychologically, so I didn't bother to get in a kayak. I could stay on the big boat just fine, but putting me in a kayak, I think, would be close to some form of water torture, really. So I got out on land and hiked around a bit when they did that, but I didn't get into the kayaks. But Cricket did. She likes the water. She can swim. And it was a great experience.
Diving then.
Say no diving, no, not at all. It was the adult university, who I guess still exists. I haven't worked for them since this Alaska trip because I retired from Cornell soon after that. They used to do some really fine travel trips. They have become, in my experience, less inclined for education, more inclined for entertainment. And I'm not much of an entertainer. I still hope I'm an educator, though. I don't know how they survived the pandemic.
I saw quite a few cars in that picture. Are they serviced? They have gas pumps and all the usual things for cars?
Yes, they do. In Juneau, they do. Not a lot of service stations, but they do have sources, and it's probably brought in by boat. It's expensive. It really is. We did have a rental car for a while, and it was worth doing. That got us out of the city.
How far can you drive?
We went into the edge of the Tongass National Forest over Cricket's objections part of the way. I was driving. And I guess we drove about 50 miles north and east.
Okay.
That's where I saw the marmots.
And then you have a barrier where you can't get any further then.
The road just ends.
Yeah.
That's a sufficient barrier. Yeah. And most of it's a gravel road to the end. Cricket gets anxious when I drive into places to see birds and other things sometimes, because I don't pay much attention to that.
Sometimes the pumps have signs to note less gas for 48 miles or whatever.
Yes. Right. I didn't see that, really.
Okay.
Well, on that, when I was first in the US, I drove across Oregon, and I thought it was covered with trees and
Beautiful.
the Cascades, and you've got this, I guess, high desert. And that,
Yeah.
I remember seeing no gas for 110 miles.
That was before electric cars.
Ah,
Yes.
Charlie, did you take all those pictures?
Yes, if I didn't take the pictures, I have a credit at the bottom. So the colored map of Alaska is not mine. That's off the website. And the poster of North to Alaska was not mine. The others were my pictures.
Yeah, it wasn't a question about copyright. It was just a comment on the quality of those animal
Oh.
shots. What kind of
Let's say
photography?
the
do you
animals in
lug around?
Alaska are pretty tolerant. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut occasionally, so I get pretty good. Most of them are with a medium focal length telephoto, zoom telephoto. It was, I think, maxed out at 150 millimeters. And because I use an Olympus camera, that's equivalent to 300 millimeters in a standard camera. Olympus is a 4/3 camera, they call it.
Nice shots.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And Charlie, your fascination with the red squirrel, can you explain why?
Yeah, I grew up with them if I hiked into the high mountains where I grew up. And I spent a lot of time following them, thinking that some of the sounds they made were birds. And that's when I got to know them. And we have them visiting our bird feeders. We have a small spruce plantation on our property, Norway spruce. And they come to our bird feeders in the wintertime. And they're dear little animals. They're really aggressive toward each other.
Yeah.
But they're pleasant to watch. The downside of all squirrels, including chipmunks, is that they are fairly efficient nest predators on birds. They'll eat the eggs and young out of the nests, but I guess I'm willing to trade that for seeing them up close and learning more about them.
We had one in our clothes dryer.
Oh,
It found its way through, opened the door to the vent and came through.
that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
That's really
It was
cool.
cold.
I hope you had it on a delicate cycle, but
If they put it on hot and it blew it out.
Came out well done.
yeah, the folks that have them get into their house, we haven't experienced that because we have it secured from most rodents. So don't appreciate them at the same level I do. Same for flying squirrels. They're notorious for moving into the attics of people's homes.
Yes. Our red squirrels are very aggressive. They do that. They eat holes, get into the attic, they build a nest in there, and then they die and make a bad smell.
They do, yeah, that happens.
I'll say.
That's why we put food for them outside the house, keep them outdoors.
And they can be,
Make it inside.
Yeah, right.
there's a
I'm
fallacy.
trying to
in
get
that
rid of a few out of our soffit right now.
Oh my, yes.
Oh,
They can
yes.
be particularly annoying to golfers who are trying to putt or hit off a tee when they're
Chattering.
screaming at each other.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, their mode, as I explained in my newsletter, some of you probably haven't seen it, but they are territorial, and territoriality works well in animals when they've got something that's easy to defend. And they, of course, collect those spruce cones, pile them up for the winter, and that's a very defensible food source. They can keep other critters away from it if they choose. And with birds, they're defending mates and real estate during the summertime, and that's a nice patch to have as well.
Any ptarmigan?
On this trip, we did not see them. One of the members of a group that went on a longer hike with the group did see one ptarmigan, willow ptarmigan up there. We had seen them and heard them on a prior trip when I was working with my graduate student there, and I've seen them most frequently in Rocky Mountain National Park. They're fun to see.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they're very tolerant of people.
Quite.
Yeah, very tolerant. They're a grouse, basically. The red
Yeah.
grouse of England is a ptarmigan.
That changes its coloring.
Yes. Yeah, if you want to see the expertise of the artist Louis Agassiz Fuertes, who lived in Ithaca until 1928 when he passed away, go to the Lab of Ornithology, and if they will let you into their lecture hall there's a picture of ptarmigan in summer and in winter that Fuertes painted. The winter birds are in all white plumage against a background of snow. the summer birds are in their speckled plumage against the summer background. And in both cases, but especially the summer painting that he did, they're almost indistinguishable from the background. Furities was
Exactly.
the first of the artists to employ or understand and employ protective coloration in his paintings. And that's easily the best example I know. So it's worth a visit out there when the Furities room is open for you to look at these beautiful
Right.
oil paintings of Furities, to take a look at his ptarmigan.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
folks.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Kirk, if you could stop the recording